Welcome, and yes, we're back. After 2 months off, we are back and ready to go. And I didn't even have the run sheet right in front of me when I was about to start the show. Mike, how are you going?
Good. A little rusty probably, but pretty good.
I'm very rusty. And how about you, Sweetie?
I am going spectacularly. I can't even say the word properly. That's how spectacular I am.
Awesome. And I'm in Sagat for episode 55 on this Sunday, the 10th of October, 2021. On this week's show, we'll be discussing what have we been doing in the last couple of months, the highlights from the Tokyo Game Show 2021, my impressions of the Switch OLED, and a review of Metroid Dread. And then I think also some impressions from Mike, as he's just got the game. As always, you can follow us on socials, on Bigwig Pod, that's BIGWIGPOD. Mike, what are we missing, Swinny? You go.
No, I was just pointing out that the socials at the bottom of this new amazing layout. Amazing work, Mike and Intergot. Thank you so much.
Well, 99% Mike, so...
Yes.
No, it was 99% procrastination, 1% Mike.
Well, that's why we were off for 2 months. No.
Yes.
I think it helped to get it focused on, okay, we'd taken a break, it was a bit unexpected, but here's a good chance to come back with, the fresh look and feel that we kind of wanted to.
Yeah.
That would kind of drag you along for a bit. Like, the idea was when we had a 1 year anniversary, we were kind of going to go there, but then we didn't have enough in place. So we thought we need 2 months off to do it.
Let us know, by the way.
This is version 2.0 of the show, where we'll start to stream the actual show rather than record and then post it. So a little bit more fresh, hopefully some interaction from the audience going forward. New layout design on everything. So that should all be going live tonight by the time people can see it. And it's really exciting. And for a while, there wasn't that much news. And then, there was some of the Smash Direct, so we did actually do the reactions to that, but it wasn't a huge amount of news in that interim period anyway, right, Swinny?
Yeah, I mean, there was some stuff even though it started when we were still on the show, everything to do with Activision, Blizzard, and all the scandals there, that's kind of really tricky stuff to cover because a lot of that information is not publicly known. You don't want to make too many assumptions, but also it was just a horrible story. Who wants to talk about that stuff, really, honestly? It needs to get out there, but it's difficult to chat about. But the one thing about the layout I really want to point out is these things. Let's see if I can do here. Can you see these? Wait, there it is.
It's
I'm
delayed.
The opposite. I'm delayed, so it's difficult for me to get my finger. These little icons are just amazing. So it's probably pretty obvious to tell what my one is and what Intergot's one is. Bike. Yours might require a little bit more explanation.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's a little tiny on this one.
So what is it, Mike? Yours?
That's Commander Shepard from Mass Effect.
It's also an audio podcast, so we should say that we have gone with a very masculine theme. If you check out our YouTube and also check out your podcast feed, we should have a new icon coming up. It can actually take a fair amount of time to refresh. It can take up to a month for the podcast art to actually refresh.
Wow.
So check us out on bigwigpod.com and you'll see our new masculine theme. It's very, bold, strong, manly colors because
alpha male.
We're alpha dogs.
Chad.
Absolute alpha
With
males,
Chad.
yeah. Lots of camos and yeah.
And with just quickly on the reactions before we chat about what had actually happened. So you can check out our reactions on our YouTube channel. I think it's youtube.com/bigwigpod or something like that, or channel/bigwigpod.
/C, I think.
Yeah, that's it. /C/bigwigpod. There was 2 funny things in my opinion. I've actually watched it myself. It was the Mario movie cast. That was quite hilarious to me. We're just losing our shit. I think people don't understand as well. We Swinny and I have been recording for a while. We're tired. So I think I was a bit delirious, at least I think you're a bit delirious as well, Swinny.
Yeah, I think, but everyone else on the internet pretty much had the same reaction to us. It's
That's true.
absurdity, especially of being the thing is Chris Pratt, right? That picture they used of him was the most unsuitable picture. It's
Mario.
There was no joy in his face. Chris Pratt's a really funny guy, and they could have used one of him smiling, and he's just there, black and white, and it's
That's true.
What?
That's true.
So check that video out. It's our most popular clip now. and the one that just went up this week as well.
Yeah, so we're reacting
couple,
to
actually.
Sora getting into Smash. We're not going to cover it on this show, but when Sora does land in Smash, we'll cover the character there. I have decided on a new main, Swinny. It will be Doom Guy, as I'll be calling him. Well, I'm not too bad with me Gunner, so I thought I'll just like main Doom Guy for a while and see how I go. But that was funny, that reaction, because I genuinely thought they were adding some character from within the Dark Souls franchise. Now, I'll defend myself. You kind of were believing it for a minute.
Oh, no, the thing is, right, I 100% don't... I completely see where you're coming from. I completely see where everyone was coming from. It was like... It was very much... It felt like almost a troll. But the part of me was like... Something just didn't feel right, so I wasn't letting myself believe it was actually that until I actually got something more. But the pose was the thing that got me the most, right at the end when he like hovered his hand over the fire, like the Dark Souls pose. That's the part where I'm like, oh, he's doing the pose, and it was just nothing. It had nothing to do with it.
I was glad to see after the fact that a lot of people were like, oh, like it's Dark Souls, Dark Souls. Like I was watching Max Mofo, which is probably a more hardcore audience probably than the general audience out there. So the whole chat was going crazy, just saying Dark Souls, Dark Souls, Dark Souls. So I was kind of thinking, okay, I'm vindicated to some degree. And now with the next Smash, which will be on the next console for Switch or for Nintendo, I actually hope they have a Dark Souls character because I couldn't believe how hyped I got for that. So no, that
would be
really
really
awesome.
Cool, I reckon.
I think that's what we were thinking it would be.
Yeah.
I was hoping that the pose, what is it? Praise the Sun. Mario was going to do it.
That would have been awesome.
That would have been freaking awesome.
But yeah, but like Sora is still cool. It's a cool addition. I'm looking forward to. I think it's the 18th of October it comes out, so it'll be not the next show, the week after that we actually talk about.
Well, they actually said the date, and we missed it. They said it in when they were giving the updates about the Mii costumes. So we were just like so hyped, I think, for the Doom Guy thing that, you know, I'm really happy for people for getting Sora because I know that people were super passionate. It was the #1 most requested character to get in the game. So it's awesome that they could cap the game off like that. But let's jump in to our We're Back segment. So yeah, we thought we'd do a quick rundown for like some of the games that we've been playing, some of the things we've been doing in that period of time. I think like I was chatting to you guys like about my first impressions of Skyward Sword, and yeah, like I love this game. So like I obviously won't do a review or anything like that. I plan to do a review, but I played a lot of Twilight Princess. I would rank Skyward Sword, and it has to be like this version of Skyward Sword above Twilight Princess for me. I think this game would have been insanely frustrating to play on the Wii. Like I pretty much played in button mode for the most part of it. I was doing, you know, the Joy-Con version for a while, but I sort of just capped out at that in the end. So it was sort of annoying me. But yeah, no, really good game. Huge quality of life improvements. Did you go back to it, Swinny? I know you were playing it a little bit.
I haven't gone back to it yet, no, unfortunately. But I've beaten the originals, so I didn't feel as much of, not a rush, but I didn't feel as compelled to play through it straight away. I think unlike you, where it was a brand new experience for you, pretty much, you know.
Yeah, and it was awesome. And it's like, it was perfect timing, you know, between the big Zelda games. Totally made sense why they did it, you know. And like I said, I really loved it. Got through, finished everything in the game, collected everything, you know, maxed hearts, all that stuff. I think like every Zelda game that I've played for a legitimate amount of time, I've done that. It feels like you have to do that. Same as Metroid that I'll sort of get to next. But the other game that I'm like getting into, part of the Dirty Dozen, is Final Fantasy VII, the original, or awesome. Like, you know, on the Switch. It hasn't gripped me as much as I thought it would, to be honest. And like, I'm actually playing at like 3x times battle speed and everything like that. I don't know if it's like just showing its age or I haven't gotten far enough into the game. I'm probably 8 or 9 hours in.
Can I ask roughly, you could say location without spoiling, like what kind of area are you at the moment? Just so
I can't even remember. I'm like out of Midgar. I'm like going around the map. Okay. I've gone to like multiple, like crossed the seas multiple times, if that makes any sense. I think I got a buggy now. So I'm like going around on a buggy. I don't know, probably about a quarter of the way through the game, maybe a fifth.
To be honest, I don't think you're probably going to see a massive change in your impressions of the game if you're probably not feeling it now. Um, for me, I think your enjoyment of someone's enjoyment of this game really stems from how much do you love the character in the world and do you love the battle system. If neither of those super grip you, the game to me doesn't have that much else to offer. And I do love Final Fantasy VII, but subsequent playthroughs over the years has lessened my take on that. So
I still enjoy it. I played it. Sorry, go on, Antigo.
No, I was just going to say quickly, and I'll throw it back to you. Like, kind of on your point, though, Swinny, it feels a bit of a... It just doesn't feel very cohesive as a game. It feels like so many different styles and just like... Because honestly, apart from you spoiling the biggest, spoiler in the game, I didn't know anything about the game. I thought it was like sci-fi all the way through. Like, I didn't actually understand it got into like the fantasy, classical Final Fantasy sort of settings and stuff, which makes sense when I think about it because of the chocobos and stuff. I'm like, how would have that worked, in my mind? But yeah, it really has just been like the tone like is really weird and changes, and the setting, and I don't know. Like, and having said all of that, it's still very solid. Like, it's still like a 7 or 8 out of 10 for me. As for what I've played so far, it's just not. It's nowhere close to Final Fantasy VI and knocking that off. That is just so cohesive, and it's probably an unfair comparison because that was the last of the 2D big ones. They'd refined everything. They were on, song, and then they've gone to a brand new thing. And you can kind of see how, I look at it and think maybe Final Fantasy IX, I could really love that because that's way more cohesive. And I know that's one of your favorites, Winnie. But Mike, what were you about to say?
To me, it's still one of my most beloved games. I think I've played it on maybe 4 or 5 different platforms now. But it's nothing compares to the original experience playing it on my 34 centimeter TV when I was a kid. And 34 centimeters is what, 17 inches? I don't
Bigger
know
than
what the
Swinny's TV, wasn't it?
No, this was on my really, really tiny one. I'm talking about the tiniest TV I think you can actually buy, which was the 34 centimeter one. And it didn't matter because back then I'd just be sitting right in front of it, and it was an amazing experience. One of the most memorable experiences I've ever had. And playing it more recently on stuff like the PSP, obviously on the Switch now, on PC, I've tried all the different platforms. Didn't get as far as I did, initially when I finished the game. It didn't have the same feel, and I don't know if that's because, well, obviously there's the you play it at a certain time and you're a kid and it's a completely different world and a completely different life that you're leading then, and what you absorb and what you like and associate is completely different. And as an adult, it just doesn't have the same meaning to you. And it also doesn't really stand a test of time as much as something like Metroid or any of the SNES sort of era games where the pixel art is just timeless. I think with stuff like this, it's starting to age a little bit. But I still, thoroughly enjoy it. Personally, it's my favorite Final Fantasy game that I've ever played. But
you haven't played Final Fantasy VI, right?
No, that's the thing, I haven't. But again, I suspect it's probably going to be the same sort of thing where I didn't play it at the right time, that playing it now just won't have the same impact because there's so many other games I've played since that it won't be the same as if you had played it back in the day, unfortunately.
No, it'd be really interesting if we ever cover it on Game of some other year.
Yeah, it'd be cool. I'd definitely give it a go.
Just cranking out the rest of the ones for me. Battlefield 2042, I just played the open beta. So I'd actually pre-ordered it because they had a really good deal on Amazon and I wanted to play it on PC. Man, I felt the game was really like sluggish. So just, with my monitors, I've got gaming monitors, so they actually show me what the monitor's rendering the frames as. Like, so it's definitely, you know exactly what it is. And it was hovering at like 60 to 70 frames per second. I've got G-Sync, so it shouldn't, no frame tearing or anything like that. Some dips to like 40s and 50s every now and then. But it just felt like, I don't know, I was like sludging through stuff. Like, it just didn't feel snappy or nice. Like, but having said that, I think I just much prefer, snappier Quake, Unreal Tournament, Halo style first-person shooters and, multiplayer shooters. So I actually was able to cancel my pre-order. So plus I didn't feel like you guys were that hyped about playing it. I don't know. So I was a bit gun shy because I'm thinking I'm not going to play this if no one else is playing it. So
it would have been peer pressure for me, honestly. If you guys were playing it, I would have bought it.
I'm looking
Sony.
forward to playing it. I just don't want to play a game until it's released.
Yeah.
The idea of betas and alphas and all that, like, it just doesn't interest me unless for some reason it's like a game that I'm like, I really need to try this right now. Like, I can wait for Battlefield, you know. So
Yeah.
it's only going to get better, and also it's only going to get better post-release. So it's like, yeah, but 100% like the it hasn't been well received beta. You know, it's like,
Oh, really?
There's
It
lots
hasn't?
of issues. Yeah, no, there's a
Yeah.
lot of issues with it at the moment, and a lot of stuff is stuff that is just not in there because it's not there yet. You know, so,
Okay.
but 100%, like, if you're not feeling it, cancel pre-order, and if you know, you can always try it again in the future. You know, and just
Yeah.
trial it or whatever. You know, so
Well, I think because we're all got Game Pass Ultimate, I think it's probably going to be on there for like 10 hours. You know, how they
Yeah.
do the EL trial. So I'll do that. You know, you'd be interested in this, Mike. Yeah, I've got a RTX card, not a strong one at all, but you know, Battlefield 5 had DLSS. This one, they say it's got DLSS, but I couldn't enable it. So I was probably losing like 20 frames just there as well. And then I've read online people say it does work for them, and then other people like it doesn't. Like Battlefield 5 does, but this game doesn't. So yeah, there seems to be a hell of a lot of issues with the game, unfortunately. But like, having said all of this, the concept, and I was playing literally like 128 player maps and stuff. It was insane. It was really fun, and like the environmental effects were like insane. And I've never really played Battlefield, so I could see the fun in it. And last one from me quickly is just around Rocket League. So I got back into Rocket League in a really big way. I'm like right at the cusp of getting to champ.
that's awesome. That's
Yeah. I'm like, but I actually deleted it.
One more match. She's like, nah.
No, because what I found
done.
was that I just got so consumed with it. I wasn't like stupid. I wasn't playing it for like hours and hours and hours every day. But it would be like, oh, I've got a break at work. I'll fit in a match, you know, before my next meeting just to refresh and get out of work mode. But I wasn't playing Final Fantasy VII. I've got all these other games I want to play. And like, you know, having gotten through a few games, it's like very satisfying. I just felt like I was bloody playing the same game over and over and over and over again. I think I'm up to, I told you, Mike, I can't remember what the number was. Like, oh, yeah, it was easy to remember. It was 6,900. No, so 690 hours
690
is what
hours,
I've put
yeah.
into Rocket League so far. So I thought, well, that's a good place to stop. Like 690 done. Like maybe I won't play it for a while.
nice.
Yeah. But it's a freaking good game. Like it's probably a top 3 game for me, Rocket League of all time. Still hasn't beaten Super Metroid. That's still my number one. Mike, over to you. What have you been up to in the last couple of months that we've been off?
Oh boy, lots of different ones. So the first one is Death's Gambit. That was a more recent one because it just recently got released on Switch with the Afterlife expansion. So if you have the game on another platform, I believe that the Afterlife expansion comes for free. So they introduced a whole bunch of new areas. For those of you who aren't familiar with Death's Gambit, it's a Metroidmania style kind of game. Really cool mechanics. Awesome different. Have you seen this one, Sony? Have you actually played it?
I've known about Death Gambit for a long time. I haven't played
Of course
it.
you would have. It's fantastic. The Switch version was on special, pre-release special, which was really good. I think it was 10% off. And I played the original ages and ages ago when it was out on Game Pass, because I think when it originally came out it was available on Game Pass. So I played it a little bit then, but not enough to really get far. But from what I've heard, the improvements they've made are really good. Highly recommend it to both of you guys. I think it's right up your alley. It's pure.
Sorry, that is the most Dark Souls stat screen on the
absolutely
straight
Dark
up
Soulsy.
Souls.
It absolutely is. It takes so much inspiration from Dark Souls, and I think unashamedly so. It also has quite a few little quirky pieces of dialogue that also reference it, but in a very joking kind of way. So really cool game. Highly recommend it on any platform. I happen to play it on the Switch, which I think is a really good one to play it on.
How does it compare to Ender Lilies? Because that's another Metroidvania that's got some Dark Souls inspiration.
Yeah. So it's not. It's weird. In a way, Ender Lilies I feel was a more polished experience, but in terms of my enjoyment of the game and the ability to experiment, I prefer this one. So I went down, for example, down the magic path, but I feel like going as a melee build would be significantly different in terms of the gameplay.
Okay.
So really, really fun. It reminds me a little bit of Salt and Sanctuary in some ways. It's a different sort of combat the way it plays. Again, heavily inspired by Dark Souls, which is an awesome thing. It's not a bad thing at all. So highly recommend it. Love the game. What else?
Sorry, just wanted to
Yeah?
correct. This game is not on Xbox, so
It's not on
it
Xbox.
wouldn't have,
Sorry, no.
so it wouldn't have been on
It's-
Game Pass. So
I think it was on Game Pass on PC. That's where I
Really?
originally played it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, Swinny can confirm
I'll
that,
check
but
it.
I'm
I'll check it
pretty
out.
sure it was on that.
Swinny
Oh my
is
gosh, the boss that's showing on the screen right now
Okay,
is the one I'm
you're-
stuck at.
yeah, that's correct.
It was?
Correct.
Really?
Okay,
so
oh,
it's
yeah,
only
that's-
PC.
Yeah, well,
That's
only
so
PC was
strange.
weird. Yeah.
And there weren't achievements enabled. That's why I didn't show up in my list.
Ah, maybe that's why.
That's awesome.
No, because I'm searching on achievement sites. So.
No, I get you.
Yeah.
But yeah, highly recommend it. It's a shame that it's not available on Game Pass, and it's not available on Xbox at all. Is it now? Is it actually out on Xbox? I know it's on
No.
PlayStation and Switch.
No.
That's a real shame. Also, extremely weird that it would be on Game Pass, but then not available at all on Xbox, but all the other platforms. In any case, great game. So, what else? The next thing that I've been doing is dabbling a little bit into racing games. So, I finally set up my wheels. Now, I say wheels because I'm an idiot that unfortunately had to purchase both of the Logitech wheels, the G29 and G920, I think it is.
Why?
Because one's for the Xbox, one's for the PlayStation, and they're not intercompatible. I know. It's
I know
really
that they're not.
annoying.
I know that they both work on PC, but don't.
They
work
both
on
work
each
on
other.
PC, yeah, but they don't work on each other, which
But
is
you got
really
both,
annoying.
just so you could play like what Forza and also like a Gran Turismo.
Well, I had different racing games. So one thing that I may have mentioned in the past is I obviously play a lot of different kinds of games, but one of the things that I quite enjoy are racing games of all sorts, both rally, proper racing games, sims, arcade racing, whatever. And they happen to have the wheels on special. It's like 2-3 years ago or something. I don't remember when. So I basically managed to get both of them for the price of just one. So of course
so
I ended up
hectic.
getting both to be able to play both. So that's
Wow,
not the point.
2 for the price of 1's insane.
What it was actually really good because they were retailing for I think 450 or $500 or something, and I got them for about 250 each, which was worth it. And also got the so I drive stick shift or manual for those in Australia, and I also you can get the Logitech stick shifter as a separate attachment, so you can do the proper manual shifting with a clutch and everything. And then I just threw every game over the course of about 3 weeks at this thing, but on PC, on Xbox, on PlayStation. So Gran Turismo Sport, which I think is what's showing now in the B-roll. Obviously Forza, Assetto Corsa, pretty much anything that I had access to that either I already had or was available cheaply to purchase, I played it. And awesome experiences. Interestingly enough, though, and I don't know if that's the thing that says something about my personal character, probably the most fun I had was in Forza Horizon 4, and that is turning off the HUD and having absolutely nothing, no minimap, nothing, and just driving around. Doing literally nothing, like just spending a few hours at a time, maybe just driving the streets, like I'm in the real world or something, just playing around with the stick shifter, which was really fun.
I don't know much about Forza. Like the only Forza game I'd ever played was the one on 360 with you. But
Forza 2, wasn't it?
I think it was 2, yeah.
yeah, probably. But my impression from just the random general gaming community, it feels almost like Forza Horizon is now the premier brand for Forza.
It probably is, yeah, but it's a totally different kind of game.
I know it's totally different,
obviously,
like
yeah,
open
but
world and all that sort of
would
stuff.
be,
But
yeah.
yeah, it just feels
I
like
agree.
that, the vibe of it. And now it's kind of surprising that Forza Horizon 5, right, is coming out, the one based in Mexico, before the next Forza game,
yeah.
which is strange.
It's also, by the way, quite ironic that it's the game that is least suitable for a wheel. I couldn't play the actual races with a wheel.
That's what I thought.
Yet it was the
if
most
you ever,
fun.
If you ever want to sell the PlayStation wheel, let me know before you sell it.
The PlayStation's actually the one I want to keep because
Oh,
of the
okay.
new Gran Turismo that's coming out. And also,
That's why.
interestingly enough, even though they're priced the same, the PlayStation one has more features on it.
It's got
an
extra
extra
buttons, yeah.
dial. It's got extra buttons. It even has the actual rev counter, so you know when to shift, as
Mm.
actual LEDs on on the wheel, which is really cool. And the Xbox One doesn't, so I think it's worse value.
We haven't spoken about this, Swinny. Sorry, Mike.
Mm.
But I did reach out to Mike because I've been watching heaps of F1, and I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I'll like get a wheel, and then I'm like, I've got to back out of this insanity.
It's look, I don't want to push you towards it. It's freaking awesome, is all I can
Look,
say.
I
It's-
cannot judge any video game purchases ever because I purchase stupid
So-
things for stupid
What?
reasons.
It's not about judging. I don't want him to make a purchase that he may not enjoy. I personally love it. It's by far my favorite way of playing those games now. However, and I will put a little asterisk next to that. Another friend was asking me the same thing. He's like, "Oh, I want to get this wheel, blah blah blah." So eventually, he ended up settling. He plays GT Sport a lot, and I mean a lot. It's probably his most played favorite game. And he ended up getting it, and he did not enjoy it. He was slower than using a controller. And I said, give it time, because he spent probably thousands of hours playing that game with a controller. So his brain would just be switched into that. Whereas he just didn't enjoy it with the wheel. And he didn't enjoy it mostly, I think, because he wasn't getting good lap times. And he's very competitive, and he plays online quite a lot. So if you do it just for the enjoyment and the fact that it feels so much better, it's amazing. It's one of the coolest experiences I've had. And put VR on top of that, if you plug it into your PC, it's amazing. It's so cool.
I don't want to get stuck in there when Facebook goes down.
So cool. So the last one, because I think we talked enough about racing games, is the one that comes to mind. It's actually a whole bunch of different titles, but Windbound is the one that I booted up more recently. So I haven't really gotten extremely far into it just yet, but I'm really enjoying the experience so far. It's made by an Australian team, which is why I actually honestly got it, just because I really wanted to support Australian development. It looks a little bit like Zelda, and I feel like it had some inspiration from that game in some good ways. So far, it's just a really cool, chill game that you need to craft different resources in order to sail to a bunch of different islands in order to unlock the statues that are actually showing right now on the screen, which then progresses to the next section. It's procedurally generated, but so far the environments have actually been pretty good, and it's just a really cool, chill game. The difficulty is
It's got Wind Waker vibes in the clip here.
yeah,
Which is
mixed
pretty
Yeah,
with
massively.
mixed with a little bit of Breath of the Wild. It really does feel like it. Even the music feels so inspired by Breath of the Wild. In any case, Australian developer. I think it's currently on special on Switch again, so I recommend it. And I have been playing a bunch of other titles. Oh gosh, so
Sorry, one question.
Yep.
Sorry, one
About
question. You said that Switch. How does that run on the Switch? Because that
Not
game,
bad.
that game looked pretty good. I'm thinking, how does the Switch running on that
It
game?
feels like generally 30. Sometimes it does dip a little bit, but from what I've seen from reviews and stuff as well before I purchased it, people were saying it runs fine. It's a relatively solid 30 so far. It's certainly not jarring in terms of the
Cool.
experience. So yeah, it's pretty
It
good.
looks very ambitious for a small developer. Like even if it's not a total indie of a couple of people, I don't know what the dev team's like, but no Australian studio is that big. So yeah, that's pretty impressive.
It's pretty ambitious. Really cool. And just really quickly, Golf Club Wasteland was really cool. Another sort of small scale developer. Beautiful Desolation, I quite enjoyed. Not super far into it. It's a isometric adventure game. So it looks like an isometric sort of RPG, but it's more of an adventure game. Dabbled a little bit again in No Man's Sky, sort of just checking out the latest expansion. Although I spent most of the time trying to get my head around what the hell am I doing again. And also played The Ascent with, shout out to Joe Jives a little bit. So we haven't quite finished it, but eventually I think we will.
And I got to apologize for being a very negative Nancy when I tried to play that game with you guys.
Yeah,
I wasn't in the mood to. I was not in the mood to play that style of game, especially co-op at the time, and I think I made it very clear,
So
and
disappointing.
I shouldn't have been so negative. So it seemed like a good game.
Yeah, it's
but I
fun.
was
It's
I was
a bit of fun.
downer.
That's all right. We forgive you. So what about you? Since what have you been playing?
Well, first thing I just got to do one quick thing.
Oh, here we go.
Ooh, what's going on?
He's just for the audio listeners, he's got off his chair.
Okay. All
Hell?
right,
So,
there we go.
You have to describe it for the
Yeah.
audio listeners.
So I have my most recent purchase wearing on top of my head, which is an official, very well made Assassin's Creed Odyssey baseball cap.
Can I just
Best
say,
game ever
sweetie,
made.
I have saved this story until this moment, right? I was driving in the car and I was kind of pulling up to a light, and then this kid had an Assassin's Creed Odyssey t-shirt. And I almost crashed
there
the
you
car
go.
trying to grab my phone to take a photo. Not that I ever would do that.
There's
No, you
for
wouldn't.
any
dozens
police-
of us.
In case
I was like,
anyone's-
oh my god, yeah, that's exactly the line. When if I could take a photo, I was gonna write dozens of us.
This legitimately got shipped out from the UK.
Oh my god,
It's actually, I'm shocked by how well made it is. It's actually a good cap.
Well,
I was like
when
just
you-
buying
when-
it for a joke, but I'm
when
like,
you-
it's actually a good hat.
when you're making 3 of them, you can do it handmade, obviously.
It also doesn't. It also doesn't look like super obviously like a video game thing.
That's
so I'm
true.
like, okay.
Yeah.
Does it have
that's
anything on the
alright,
back?
That's right.
Does it have anything on the
Nah.
back? Oh, yeah, you wouldn't even know. You wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
I could even wear that where I work, where you can't even say that you're a gamer. You have to be a closeted gamer.
Okay. All right. So what have I been up to? Look, there's a few. Honestly, I've played a lot of games and I've completed a lot of games. It's you got a lot of more free time when you're not doing the show, so we should break more often. So I played through a really cool little mech RPG called Armed Emeth, which is developed by Hit Point, published by Chemco. Came out at the start of August. Starts off very light-hearted, shit gets serious. It's actually a really cool RPG. Probably one of the best games I've played this year, actually. And would be a really fun, like 20-hour RPG for the Switch. So really cool Armed Emeth. I played through Dodgeball Academia. So that actually came out the same day as Armed Emeth on 5th of August. And went straight into Game Pass. That's why there's quite a bit of like a mini bubble of hype when that game came out because it was in Game Pass. Really fun game, pretty short, so it's a nice like short experience. It's like a cross between like Paper Mario, South Park Stick of Truth, but then some elements of Pokemon. But then you get into the battles, and they're like action dodgeball battles, but with stats and gear and stuff. So really fun. I believe it's still on Game Pass, so it's worth trying out. Orange Blood which is the most recent game I've played through. Oh my god, this game, very strange, really unique hip-hop JRPG centered around gang warfare, Japanese girls, and the governmental conspiracies. It's the most bizarre game I've ever played.
Those
One of them.
screenshots are awesome.
It gave me some of the most what the fuck things ever. Like the dialogue is absolutely atrocious. Like every second word is like motherfucker and all this stuff. Like it's
damn.
so bad. It was made by like one dude in RPG Maker. And it's like, but they did a lot of extra work to it. So unless you know, it's not super obvious. But yeah, honestly, it's an interesting curiosity. If it's a few bucks, Orange Blood is worth trying if you like JRPGs. But otherwise, I'd give it a miss. Evoland. So Evoland, I did mention to you guys a little while back. So Evoland Legendary Edition is a collection of Evoland 1 and 2. These games are absolutely fantastic. Like, I was shocked how much I love these. These are basically games that are built around the idea of other games. So they're their own like campaigns and stories, but especially number 2. Number 2 is a fully fledged game. The first one is almost feels like a prototype. It's the second one. But basically they blend all different types of gameplay. So 1 minute it's like a Zelda-style action RPG. Another, it's a turn-based JRPG. Then you go into a dungeon, it's like Diablo. Then it's a Fire Emblem game in the next level or next map that you go into. But they work it all in a really cool way, I think. It's always on special. So Evoland, it's on Switch. It's always on special. You guys should both try it, especially when it's like $3 sometimes. And the second game's actually got a lot of meat to it, so really cool. Final Fantasy 2. So as part of my gaming resolutions, I've been playing through any of the mainline single-player RPG, Final Fantasy games that I haven't played before or completed. And this was my first ever playthrough of Final Fantasy 2, and it will probably be my only ever playthrough of Final Fantasy 2.
Can I clarify being the nerd? And, you know, I know people would ask, Final Fantasy 2 US or Final Fantasy 4, or is this Final Fantasy 2 NES?
Final Fantasy 2 NES. So it is, and I'm playing the Dawn of Souls version, which combined on Game Boy Advance.
Yep. Cool.
So there's done tons of different versions, but basically, yeah, this game very innovative for its time. Systems really tough to deal with. I have a lot more I want to say about this game, but I'll leave it for when we hopefully eventually do a tier list of Final Fantasy games.
Ooh,
That's interesting, yeah.
You can't move on from it. Sorry, sweetie. You can't just move on when one of our most controversial videos is the Assassin's Creed tier list.
People are gonna hate.
He's gonna double down.
Fantasy. But Final Fantasy is way
gonna be
more
awesome.
like. There's way more different opinions on Final Fantasy games than there are for something like Assassin's Creed. Like, there's people like. Anyway, we'll get to it when we get to it.
Yeah. Cool.
But the games I kind of wanted to just give a little bit more of a shout out to. So the first one is Arafel. So hopefully you've got it up. So this game came out March last year. It's a game I had in my backlog for a while. It's from Stegosoft Games, and to me, this is a really special game. Its legacy is actually really cool. So this actually began as an RPG Maker 2003 game that came out in 2007. Then later on, they ported it. They say they rebuilt it using Unity, and then that was what Arafel Enhanced Edition is.
Interesting.
And I love this game so much. It's like anyone that loves like JRPGs, especially classic SNES JRPGs. Please buy this game. Like, it deserves so much more attention. It's really good. The battle system is absolutely wonderful. It's really challenging at times. It feels fair. It looks great. You know, it's just overall a fantastic game. It's not super long. But Arafel, it's always on special as well. Really, really great. The next game...
before you move on, how long is the game, roughly?
I don't know, probably 20 to 30, which is
good.
probably like, when we're talking JRPGs, like that's kind of like, I think a good length, especially for these kind of ones. But it's not, it's a game that doesn't feel too big. You know, some games you like overwhelmed. This game is just nice and succinct. But the game, which unfortunately we couldn't get the B-roll for it, the game I really wanted to point out for you guys is, oh boy, Mike especially, this game, Hellpoint. So I know you know about this game, Mike, because I think you've mentioned buying it before, but I don't believe you've played through it. This was my biggest surprise of the year. I had heard this game had a little bit of a buzz, but I love this game so much. But it's also one of the buggiest, jankiest games I've played in a long time. And it's kind of, if I can explain it this way, if you love Dark Souls, you'll probably really like this game. But if you only like, Dark Souls okay, you probably won't like this game. It's like, I think you have to have a love for that style of game for this to click with you. But basically, it's like Dark Souls meets Event Horizon. Like crazy space sci-fi mixed with hell stuff. But like it feels a bit different than like your Doom or something. It feels more like Event Horizon where it's like satanic, kind of like, but like Doom's very tongue-in-cheek. This is serious, you know what I mean? But yeah, it takes the obscure systems of Dark Souls and just like amplifies it. It's like they basically said, everything we love about Dark Souls, we want to turn up to 11. It is, as I said, it's buggy. So it's like even the last boss doesn't work properly and stuff like that. So it's like, you got to put up with that jank. But I really recommend Hellpoint to anyone that absolutely loves Dark Souls. So
got to get into it.
Yeah, the last game, I'm actually not going to spend too long on this because I could talk for a long time about this game. I might do a belated review, I don't know yet. Tales of Arise. So we all know in past episodes that I've been super looking forward to this game. I'm a massive fan of the Tales series, the ones that I've played. This is an awesome game, but it's also very flawed as well. So I've beaten this twice, so I've kind of really, the good parts and the bad parts really stick out to me now. It's absolutely beautiful. The battle system is amazing. It just feels so smooth. You feel like a badass in this game. But I'd say it gives a great first impression for the first, like, let's say 30 hours, because it's a long game. 30 hours is like, oh, this is awesome. But then like the last quarter of the game, a lot of that stuff seems to fall apart, or it just feels like it's rushed at the end. So I'd say if you love the Tales games, this is a no-brainer. Everyone else, there's a demo. Give that a shot. If you like the feel of it, then you'll probably like the game.
Because how long did it take you to beat it the first time? Because I think I gave you a week to review it. in the original schedule.
It's funny. I actually beat it in just over a week,
There you go.
or a week.
You probably could have done
But
a review.
yeah, like you were actually your estimates were strangely on the money. The reason why I laughed at your estimates is because I was expecting this game to be based on Tales of Vesperia to be a really hard achievement completion. It was actually really easy. Like I've done it twice already. So
Is it a one run or a 2 run to achieve everything?
one run. Like there's
Every game should be like that.
There's zero missable. Like it's the complete opposite of Tales of Vesperia when it comes to what you got to do to get all the achievements. So, but it's like just as a game, it's I give the demo a shot if you like it. There's a lot of anime. If you don't like anime, then you're not going to like this. So,
Oh, look, this looks really cool.
Tales of Rise is great. It is great.
I didn't get Tales of Vesperia thanks to you.
Yes, that game is
Advertising
way
it
better
so
in
much.
my opinion. But that's just my
Okay,
opinion.
cool.
But
Looking forward to it on the Switch.
the average opinion would be like Arise is the one to get now. Yeah.
This game is much more, I think, accessible. I think the it's like people that aren't super hardcore into that style of game. It's got a much broader appeal, so that's why I think it's so successful at the moment.
Okay. And for our first bit of news, we're back. When we don't have that much news, we're being a bit more brutal on the news, is the Tokyo Game Show. So, Swinny, do you want to go through the major highlights from the Tokyo Game Show?
Yeah, let me just swap my position in this weird thing. Sorry.
That's all good.
So we've got one news story this week to correct one
The
single
change
news
of
story.
logos from Bandai Namco to Bandai Namco.
But
So
just before you move on, sorry, Swinny. Like in our first show, I think we had like 20 or 30 topics. And now, Bigwig version 2.0, we have literally one story and we're not covering Twitch because we're just not super interested in it. So
it was for, I think, a good week to come back because
Yeah.
we wanted to catch up.
Yeah,
true.
So, but the Tokyo Game Show did happen. So obviously it happened online. It wrapped up this week. There's a bunch of small announcements coming out of it. Overall, I think the feeling is there's just not much happened. There's no huge headlines that are making waves or anything. A lot of the stuff is very niche as well this year. But one thing that did happen is what you can see on the screen for people looking at the video podcast was Bandai Namco kind of coming out the gate and saying, hey, we're refreshing for next year. And part of that is this logo change. So going from their like bubble, almost a Katamari style Bandai Namco logo of the orange and everything, to this very different looking speech bubble kind of pink logo. So I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on the change here.
Maybe you, Mike.
Well, as someone who doesn't really dabble with graphic design, I outsourced everything you see here on Fiverr, so can't say much about it. Look, all jokes aside, I don't know. It doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't stand out. I think the original.
You can just say you don't like it. That's what
No,
I was
it's not that I
wondering.
don't like it. It's not that I don't like it. I don't have any strong feelings about it, if that makes sense. I don't think it's great for starters. It doesn't
All right.
mean anything to me. I don't think it's necessarily
Okay,
super
Intego.
bad, but I think it's a step backwards.
Intergot, do you like the logo or do you don't like the logo?
I was also just letting Mike ramble because my baby's crying in the background. I think my
Oh,
wife's
fair
going to
enough,
grab him. So, look, I think there's a big trend in all logos of just becoming very bland, very non-controversial, just no like real clear defining things about it, very weak silhouettes, all that kind of stuff. And like it's quite funny that we're covering the only story we're covering. And this is not the only component of it, but is around a logo change, because we have changed our logo and we've changed all our branding, but I think it is reflective of what our philosophy is on logos and trying to make things distinct and colorful and interesting and dynamic. And we've got a new mascot, Poddy, to represent the show as well, whereas this is just boring, I guess.
Bland,
It's very
yeah.
corporate. It's very very like what I don't like is you could just put any name of a company in there and it still works, because it doesn't really work. It's just boring.
I was gonna say, yeah, it works because it doesn't work at all. It's just so plain. It's this whole new movement around minimalism, I think, which I know I've ranted
Yeah.
on before, but when it comes to logo design, I think in many ways it's a step backwards. You can't distinguish them anymore. It's just blah. It's boring and plain.
So the reason I wanted to bring that up was just because I feel that Bandai Namco are on the precipice of blowing up and being a lot more of a name in the industry. Like we've got Scarlet Nexus has kind of, I think, really landed well for them. Tales of Arise has just gone gangbusters for them. Obviously, they've always got their anime titles that they put out, their licensed titles, but I think, and obviously, stuff like Dark Souls and stuff like that. But it's like, I just feel that their position, so I understand their approach for wanting a new, like, it's not just changing logo, they're saying they're changing their whole business strategy or approach and stuff, but that's like who cares about that stuff for us? But
Ooh,
it
I
is,
care about
look, well, no, but as a gamer, like we care about the end product of this stuff, But the reason I want to call it is I think they needed a change, but I 100% agree. I think they've gone from something that is like a really fun and engaging to something that's just like, yeah, what does this mean? Like, and they've said, it's speech bubble manga culture, but it's like, yeah.
And
Anyway.
I know this is also like, this is something that happened to BHP, which is a very famous Australian company. They merged with the South African mining company Billiton to become BHP Billiton. And now they've just gone, stuff it, we'll call ourselves BHP. And I kind of just wish they just called themselves Namco. Because like maybe that's my bias, that I just feel like Namco to me is like such a like strong brand in my mind.
Yeah,
But yeah, anyway, if they were going to do something, I think that would have been really cool if they'd done that.
So let's just move on to Capcom now. So Capcom they had a little bit, it was all focused around Monster Hunter Rise, as you'd expect. That's kind of their money machine at the moment. So they had some collaborations they announced for Ghouls and Ghosts, which I think is really cool what they've done there. They always do neat collaborations, but just I think seeing Arthur in like battling Monster Hunter monsters and stuff is just really, really cool. It'll come up soon in the B-roll for video watchers. But also a Sonic the Hedgehog collaboration coming next month. By the way, the Ghosts and Goblins is coming, I think, on the 29th of October, so pretty soon. But Sonic the Hedgehog, that's just, I don't know what that's going to be, but that's just strange to me. But anyway.
The way they do these things, it's so incredible. So they'll take like a certain, class that you have, and it's not just like a really simple skin or anything like that. Like they'll modify the projectiles and everything to fit it in. It's
awesome.
Really, really cool. Like, and you go to our Smash reaction. We talk about it a little bit. I just wish Nintendo did more of this with Smash. It feels like free money. They could charge for it. Take like certain characters and just give them new looks and feels of what they do, but don't change any of the underlying mechanics. Like Capcom's proven that you can do it. They're doing these things for free and just releasing it. I think it's super awesome. And like Rise is one of my favorite games from this year. Honestly, I know I'll get lost in that game if I play it too much. I just need to like dabble in it really.
So they also confirmed the Steam PC release is coming in January. So for anyone waiting for that, waiting for something that's got a bit more grunt to it, way more grunt than the Switch. That's not far away. They also talked a little bit also more about Sunbreak. So as expected, it's going to have a new hub area, and it's going to have master rank hunts and things like that. So yeah, a little bit, good amount of information. I've still got to actually play it.
Yeah, let me know, because I'm really keen to play co-op
know.
with you. And just to be the Nintendo shield, I mean, the game, it might be the best looking game on the Switch, and it runs incredibly well, given that it's basically running on an Android phone from 3 years ago. Like, it's crazy what they can do with it. So, but yeah, the PC way is the way to go if you don't have a Switch, for sure.
Probably the biggest news to me, or the biggest kind of more interesting stuff out of Tokyo Game Show, was actually Square Enix. So Square Enix, the big flagship title of the show was Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin, which, as we know, going back to E3, was E3, wasn't it? Yeah. Was kind of a bit of a, like, people's reaction to Stranger of Paradise was very mixed. Especially, like, oh, chaos, and everything like that. But I think they've redeemed a lot of it now. Like, they've kind of turned up this like stupidness up. Like, there's a clip out there from the demo of the main character Jack being like bullshit, then turning around and playing new metal on his phone and walking away and stuff like that. But honestly, so they gave a release date. So it's coming 18th of March next year for PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Series X and PC, but it's Epic Games Store exclusive. But they also released a new demo, and so I finally got to try it this time because it was only on PS5 demo the first time.
Yeah, that's true.
And they incorporated some of the feedback that came from the first one. I really like this game. I've never played Neo. I've always wanted to, but unfortunately, I never brought it to Xbox. And I really like this, but the demo definitely struggled, like the performance-wise. It's a game that didn't look like it should struggle on a platform like a Series X, but it definitely has some issues. You hope, they've got till March to kind of fine-tune that, so you'd really hope. But also, just like they showed a lot more about the game, and it looks a lot more interesting now. And also, the information is out there about a bit more about the main character. So I'm not going to spoil anything, but it gives me more hope in how they're tying this to the first game now. Whereas before I'm like, how are they tying this to the original game? Okay. But it's still ridiculous and cheesy and like it's a stupid game, but it looks like it's going to be fun to play.
It was actually I don't remember exactly what I said when I played it, and we did cover it briefly. So I might
it's all recorded.
It was a while ago.
Talking crap now, but my recollection of it is that the gameplay actually wasn't that bad. It didn't really capture me, but again, it could just be that I didn't play it at the right time. If I had played the demo at a different time, I might have really enjoyed it, gotten into it, and even pre-ordered the game. But it played, it played nicely. It was, and Neo, by the way, was a really cool game. It highly recommend it.
The demo has a really good tutorial as well, so that's what I liked about it. I like learning what this game actually is, with battle-wise.
Now, I just put a timestamp in for myself, Intergot. So
check.
then I'm going to insert the video of what Mike's reaction is, and I'll make it zoomed into his face where he goes, it was fucking shit, the demo. Sorry.
But the game I found the most interesting, which was a brand new announcement, is a game coming out next week called Dungeon Encounters. So this game is one of the most minimalist games I've seen coming from like a major publisher. It's a dungeon crawl RPG from Final Fantasy legend, Hiroyuki Ito. And for anyone, I'll just quickly explain who he is. So he was the director of Final Fantasy VI, director of Final Fantasy IX, and director of Final Fantasy XII. All games in the Final Fantasy series I absolutely love, right? This is the crazy stuff. He was a creator of the active time battle system from Final Fantasy VI to Final Fantasy IX, the job system in Final Fantasy V, Esper Relics in 6, the Guardian Forces junction system Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy Tactics' battle system, the licensed board Gambit system Final Fantasy XII. Like, this guy is the guy behind all the best stuff in the Final Fantasy universe, in my opinion. So it's a game being led by him, but if you watch the clips, it's super minimalist. It's like a game where you're going around these dungeons on a grid and you're just filling them in, and there's like events and random ATB battles. And it's just like one of the weirdest things I've possibly seen coming out from like Square Enix, and it's so unexpected. So this comes out, on the 14th of October. It's coming out for PS4, Switch, and PC. It's $36, which feels a bit high for what looks like it's kind of more like a budget game. But honestly, I'm super interested in trying this out. It looks really cool. And look, there's also a giant cat named Sir Cat in it. So,
you know how to sell a game to me.
Yes, exactly. So, but a lot of people didn't like this. Like, the reaction to this has been very mixed, because I think people are just, it's so different.
I don't know if we mentioned it, but it's all card based, right? Like, that's the one of the core. No. Am I thinking of a different game?
Well, no. So the card based one is the Yokotara's game.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm literally
So
thinking
this, you're walking around on a grid and there's ATB battles. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of the battle system, but they specifically say on the Steam page it's ATB. So it is like Final Fantasy.
Disregard what I'm saying. All right.
Yeah. But yeah, really, really cool. And the only other thing I kind of wanted to point out was that there was confirmation that Tango Gameworks is working on an unannounced title, being headed up by the director of The Evil Within 2. So that's another Xbox game that they kind of revealed. Xbox did have a keynote, but honestly, a lot of the information was very much just like, we're looking to focus more on Japanese games. And it's like, none of it's really noteworthy stuff to discuss, honestly. So that's the Tokyo Game Show.
Nice,
Very cool.
tight one news item segment, which we've never had in the history of the show. But one thing that hasn't been taken away, one thing that survived the cull is the minute mic. It is got a new style that Mike doesn't even know about. Hopefully it works. I haven't tested it. But the bargain bin, we should say RIP bargain bin, Vale bargain bin. It's the segment from the first episode, I believe. We did it.
We did. I did love the bargain bin, but when we're talking about things to make the show a bit tighter and concise so that we're not dragging things on, the bargain bin was probably the one thing that's like, is that as valuable as possible, especially when people listen to the show a week later or 2 weeks later. All that information's out there that are not going to be relevant, you know. So.
Yeah, and there's so many other sources like Mike, you know, you and I both are always on Oz Bargain for Australians. Deku Deals is really good for Switch. PC prices, PS prices, sorry. It actually works for Xbox, works for everything. There's so many ways to get alerts. So
Yeah.
if you're getting a podcast, you got the internet. That's probably a better way to do it. So
But
Vale will raise a
mention
glass
some- Yes.
for the bargain bin. It's gone. Bye. But the minute mic has survived.
You guys don't even have color approved, brand approved.
I'm waiting for
bottles
the
there.
gear for you to send the
Thank
gear.
you.
That's
better.
even better than yours.
That is actually much better
So
than
just
mine.
for the viewers, we
For the
all showed
viewers,
our bottles, and you know, Mike had a go at Swinny, but Swinny actually had something that was super on brand,
was
on our very masculine brand that we have.
Super on brand, yeah.
Very masculine colours.
That
All right,
was
so are you limbered up? Are you ready to go?
Yep.
We should also say, and you ran this through a word count, didn't you, Swinny?
Yes, I ended up around 150 words.
Yeah. So we've got a hard limit at 160 words.
boy.
We can't insert more than 160 words. If Mike fails, he has to do a public humiliation streak or something like that.
What?
Yeah. At PAX when it comes back next year.
What? I don't remember signing up to that.
So he has to try to get through it all. I'll kind of get it ready to get loaded. It's black right now, but I'll turn it on and then we'll start, okay? So you ready to go, Mike?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, let's see.
Cool. Whoa. When does it start? Okay,
Yeah.
the Grand Theft Auto PS2 trilogy is getting a definitive edition remaster release. Sony are ending credit card pay and PayPal payments on the PS3 and Vita stores on the 27th of October 2021. They have also officially announced their acquisition of remake specialists Bluepoint Games. Xbox head Phil Spencer expects Xbox console shortages to extend into 2022. EA is considering renaming the cash cow FIFA series. Genshin Impact has generated $2 billion in its first year on mobile alone. Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford has stepped down to lead their media arm, Gearbox Studios. Capcom wants PC to eventually become their primary platform. Atari's new CEO is looking to pivot their business back to focusing on game development. The Epic Game Store has added an achievement system to their platform, and Dragon Quest the series composer Kyoichi Shigeyasu has passed away at age 90.
Very good, Mike. Very
That
good.
was-
Nice.
I feel like I could have done a
Nice.
lot more in there.
I don't
Yeah,
know
I
if
think
you guys could
150
hear
is too lenient.
what I played.
By the way, I
Hopefully.
did see it because I sort of quickly tried to look there. That was an awesome idea. I love that.
Yeah, we could see it, but the problem
really
with
cool.
it is every time Samus went through a door, it paused the counter.
That's why I started it at like 57 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Fair
I
enough,
did
fair
some
enough, fair
adjustment. I actually had to
Right.
capture that myself because I Googled or YouTubed like, you know, the timer death or something like that. And there's like nothing you can find on YouTube.
Wow.
And given the topic of the show, like Dread's going to come up in a second. I thought, you know, that's pretty adequate and it makes a lot of sense. So
Nice work.
Nice
We'll
work,
add
Mike.
more next time, Mike.
Thank
yeah,
you.
we might need to
more
bump it up to 180 words. You
I
just
reckon you
fly
can
through
go
it.
higher. Yeah, I feel like I had some buffer in there. Didn't need to rush as much.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's get into the special features. So, kicking it off with my review of Metroid Dread. So, I should say that, like, you know, putting all the cards on the table, I'm a huge Metroid fan. Super Metroid is my favorite game of all time. Still has not been surpassed to this day. Some games have come close. Dark Souls, Rocket League. Very different games, obviously, but Metroid's massive for me. I've never really played much of... Well, that's a lie. I've played a lot of Metroid Prime, but I've never, you know, I wasn't really into games at the time, didn't, you know, have a GameCube, so I've never really, like, got onto that. I will go back and play those games. I'm really keen to, obviously, but 2D Metroid is very much my wheelhouse, and this being the sort of conclusion of the 2D Metroid story arc around the Metroids... You know, simply, this game is amazing. I loved it. like it actually exceeds all of my, even if I had higher expectations for this game, it exceeded it.
Wow.
No spoilers in this review, and it won't be like a super long one. I have beaten the game. It's not like super long. It's standard sort of Metroid. I think it took me about 8 hours to get through it, and I sort of collect a bit of things, just some sort of themes around the game. I think people will find this game hard. Like I died a lot in this game. And again, no spoilers if you've seen any of the trailers, and they've tried to spoil as much as they can. And I'll spoil this game less than Nintendo will.
Everyone in the internet is trying to spoil this game. I'm regretting not buying it at launch.
I'm getting up the internet.
Yeah, no, like it would actually really made me upset if some of the things that happen in this game got spoiled. So, there's so much cool fanfare in this game. As a big Metroid fan, like obviously I've played all of the 2D Metroid games multiple times over. There's so many things, like really deep cuts that you can see what they've done, that I think most casual people like whatever, or even people who know the games. And it just shows so much love from Mercury Steam into this game. It's just like, I couldn't imagine the amount of pressure that you'd feel coming to a series that's so kind of like beloved and like honestly is a bit of a cult kind of hit rather than a critical hit. This is surely going to be the best-selling Metroid game ever until Metroid Prime 4 comes out, and I'm sure that will dethrone it. But yeah, for the guys to come through and the girls, like, man, they've done such a good job. It's so impressive. Like, I tried to keep my expectations low for it. Nintendo were hyping the hell out of this game. And yeah, man, it just really lived up to everything. Like, and there's elements of this game. So just going back to the themes, like, the difficulty in the game, I loved. Like, I wanted it to be a harder game. I don't think it's the hardest Metroid game, but I'll kind of describe that in the way that I'd probably still say Metroid is the hardest NES version.
Do you think it's the hardest after Super Metroid? Like Super Metroid onwards?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Like Zero Mission, I don't even think Zero Mission is as hard as maybe even Super Metroid, because there's so many quality of life factors that they put into the games to make them easier. And like Super Metroid, as much as I love that game, obviously, like the controls are very like, they're not modern really. Like they still feel good, but they're very specific to Super Metroid. I know that you played it recently, Mike. I don't know if you felt that, where it was a bit like, you'd probably almost say it's clunky. Maybe.
Yes and no. I think this is a really weird experience because it runs at 60, or at least it feels like it runs at 60. It's a really smooth Metroid experience. So it's hard to compare.
Wait, are you talking about Super Metroid, or are you talking about?
No,
Dread?
I'm talking about Dread. Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, I was talking about Super Metroid.
60.
I was talking about Super Metroid. If you felt that was clunky when
that's
you played
clunky.
it.
Sorry, definitely. By modern standards, that absolutely felt like a clunky game. But interestingly enough, it's still, because it's such a good game. It you don't think about that anymore, and you just play it, and you get over it, and you put yourself in the shoes of a child almost.
Yeah.
But this Dread is super smooth. It still feels like Metroid in many, many ways, but there's so many improvements, and it runs so well from what I've played so far.
So, like, as I said, I've played the whole thing. There's a few choppy bits, but it's a very solid game. Like, it's not rock solid 60, but it's pretty much rock solid 60 for most of the game. There's a few segments, I won't like again spoil it, where there's like a lot of particle effects, stuff like that happening on the screen, and if you've got an eye for it, you definitely can tell that it starts to get a bit choppy. I had played this on the Switch OLED, I should say that to people. It's funny, I don't almost think that they knew, or like maybe they weren't aware of the Switch OLED, because one thing about OLED screens is when you feed the screen just zeros, right? Like in what I mean by that is like, there's no color, it turns the display off, but then even the faintest non-zero color looks very like harsh. Do you sort of follow what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah. And I just feel that like they must have known about the Switch OLED, because there's a few scenes when you're playing it where it's like it looks a bit like weird because of the patterns that kind of occur, because it's going zeros to like a little bit of black, like it's still almost imperceptibly black on a normal display, but with OLED it pops in a bad way, really. But yeah, like I love the difficulty. Just going back to it, it's like I wanted a game like this. This is like, honestly, outside of not being 2D, which, like, to be honest, I just couldn't really ever see them going back to a 2D art style. I'd love if they did that. That is like just not what people want, really. It makes it really hard when you want to do cinematics and all that kind of stuff. But outside of that, like if I took that factor out, it's almost like the game that I would like them to make because it's trying to give you different things. So kind of going on another topic, with the Emmy, the robots that you see and they try to hunt you down, it really genuinely adds a different dimension and element to the game. Again, won't spoil any of it outside of what you've already seen with the trailers, but the title is awesome and I'm so glad they went with it because it does give you that feeling of dread when you're having to go through those segments. So just the way it works, they've clarified this in the trailers before, but it's not like the whole game is full of areas where you're running into the Emmy robots. Like there are bits where you'll know you're going to kind of confront them and you can kind of avoid them or, do whatever you need to do, what the game's trying to get you to do. It does, like, I don't know. I think because I'm a very I just want to fight and get into it and melee and like, I don't like stealth generally in games unless it's so perfectly executed. It felt a bit clunky for me at times. It felt like a little bit unbalanced almost. Like sometimes you genuinely would get caught and there's nothing you could do. Like there was like genuinely nothing you could do. And it felt a bit unfair. But the quality of life for the game is so high that, the game is super snappy, loads back in, you die, you're just straight in. Like the saves are almost irrelevant in this game. And that's where like going back to the comparison about difficulty, Metroid NES is the hardest because you don't have any quality of life. And it's just very frustrating, that game at times, right? If you're playing it like the way I played it, when I was a kid, versus this in itself is much harder, but you die, you sort of just respawn again, like straight at the last little segment. There's only one time in the whole game where I respawned like multiple screens earlier, and I was like, oh, okay, like that actually shocked me. I was like, shit, I have to get through this whole bit again. And you can get through it pretty quickly. The story's great, obviously won't spoil any of that.
Sorry, there was a question I was waiting to ask.
Yeah, sorry, mate. Yeah.
How, and it relates to that. That's why I cut him. The presentation of the story we know has kind of, or some of the worst aspects of certain Metroid games is how they handle the story or how they handle having too much story and stuff. Samus Returns was pretty good. Mercury Steam's last try at it. Is it along those lines, or do they try to force more stuff in, more narrative? Like, how's the balance with that?
Look, for me, perfect, because and I've been criticized in the comments and everything like that. Come at me, that's fine. I find it funny. I'm just like not a story person for games. Like if I want to see a really good story, I'll go like top tier TV shows, movies, books. Like with games, I've never ever gone, oh, I want to get into this story in the game, right? It's just never clicked with me. So I'm like, I don't skip over stuff really, but I sometimes tune out. Like when I'm following the story of the game, I'm like, whatever, I just want to kill things, right? But this game, it like, because it blends it in really well with the cinematics, and then like it does a really cool thing where, cinematic, and then it goes straight into the character because it's rendering it like in the game engine. It just makes it seamless. You can skip it if you really want to. Like, so you really can get it out of your way. And it doesn't do too much. I felt it was a little bit clunky at the start. It was a bit like, it got me nervous, I must admit. It was the only time playing the game where I got nervous the first like almost 5 minutes of the game. I'm like, really? Is this how they're presenting? I was kind of thinking, are they presenting like this because it's an homage to things like Super Metroid, where it's like scrolling text at the start of the game, like kind of giving you the update? And I'm like, are they like that deep into the lore and to the style of it? And like having played the whole game, they probably are paying a bit of an homage to the series and how they open it.
It felt like it, yeah.
Without having played it yet, like that sounds exactly what they were trying to do.
Yeah, it just made me nervous though, because I was like, oh god, like, because you don't know how much Nintendo influenced Mercury Steam, vice versa. You just never know that kind of stuff. You probably never know.
What you don't want is Metroid Fusion,
yeah.
And I love Fusion, but where they stop you and they feed you this stuff, and then they like just say go here, and there's like, it's almost like at that point it's a linear title. You don't want obviously Other M, which is the most extreme version of that situation, and even something like Metroid Prime 3, where it's just a lot more cutscenes, where the whole thing we talked about before, Metroid is like feeling isolated and feeling like the environment is a character as much as any NPCs you might have in any other game. So it's good to hear that it's more like Samus Returns in that regard, that I think it found a good balance.
Yeah, and I'll say the whole way it worked with, because Mercury Steam made a remake of Metroid 2, which was a Game Boy game, released it on the 3DS. Samus Returns, as Swinny just mentioned. It really does feel like, everything they learned with Samus Returns, they've just amplified it in every single way. Like the combat, the feel of the game feel is way better than Samus Returns. Like way better. It feels really good. Like, controversial, but I almost feel like this might be just the best feeling 2D Metroid game, which like I am so happy with. And it's like 60 frames per second, like Mike said. Just like on the whole linearity of the game. Because, that's kind of almost like the core element of a Metroid game where you go, oh, where do I go? Like even, Swinny, you're like, and Mike as well. I know that you both got like stuck in certain parts in Super Metroid, but I kind of love that about those games. I'll take this, and I think the audience and people listening should take this with a grain of salt because I've played a lot of these types of games and also a lot of Metroid. So it's kind of like, I'm already kind of anticipating what's next and what you should do and all these kind of things in the back of my mind. I felt it was kind of almost like, not on rails, but I don't think I even got stuck one single time in the game. Like it was just like, bang, next area, next area, next area. But, I only checked reviews last night. I hadn't seen anything about this game, anyone's thoughts on it. And I was really surprised to see people keep saying, oh, I got lost. I didn't know where to go, da, da, da. So, I think it's so hard to tune that in these kind of games because you don't want to do something that Fusion did, which was like literally put waypoints on the map. It's like, go here, go here. Like that's just horrible to do that kind of stuff. And it's a big criticism I have of Zero Mission. Like that game also really like hold your hand a bit too much, in my opinion. But still better than the original Metroid. Overall thoughts, I really, really love this game. I hope this is not the end of Metroid. Like, I hope this isn't the, Metroid 2D's finished. I don't know. Like, I know that they've sort of said this concludes the Metroid element, which is funny for a series. That's what the name of it is. And that kind of story arc, which it definitely does once you play it. But yeah, no, loved it. Absolutely loved it. Probably give it like a 9 out of 10 on the old school scale.
Cool.
I will do a tier list of the 2D Metroid games and treat the remakes as separate because I do think that they're separate in terms of how they play. And I think this will fare well, actually. Is there any questions or anything you wanted to add, Mike? Because I know you've started playing it.
No, I mean, I have a lot of questions about the game, but I don't want to know the answers to at the same time. But one thing that I do want to know is, did you ever get used to countering the Emmys? Because I tried about 15 times. This isn't a spoiler or anything because it happens within a pretty short period of time of playing the game. But you can counter them, but you have a really, really small window to do it. And I couldn't figure out exactly when that was. Did you figure that one out after all those hours?
They randomize it.
Oh, that's why I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? I swear I pressed it at the time that I thought I should press it.
Yeah, I don't want to.
It's clever though. I like that. I think that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Countering is really important in this game. Sounds weird for a Metro game. Countering is really important. They've like I said, everything they did in the first, like in the remake with Samus Returns, Mercury Steam, they've amplified it. So the countering is like a massive element of this game. Mm-hmm. And yeah, with the Emmys, they don't want you to be able to get out of that. They want it to be it's a 50-50, or not a 50-50. I'd say it's probably like a 1 in 10 chance that you'll be able to do it. I think I counted it twice in a row one time. So
whoa, okay.
But like it is, I've realized after a while it was random, and it's probably like, honestly, it's probably like 6 frame window or something like that.
Yeah, it's some ridiculously small.
Like,
I did it twice.
It's so tight.
It's
so
in 15, 20 goes.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It's super
Yeah.
tight. Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, I thought the same thing. I'm like, this isn't designed. It's a last resort, but you can't really use it because it's pointless. And the game actually tells you that. It tells you that it's highly unlikely you succeed.
So you were playing this on the Switch OLED, were you?
Yeah. I was.
Tell us more about.
That's a funny little. Maybe a segue. So yes, I bought a Switch OLED because I'm an insane person who doesn't like having money in my bank account. having said all this, and I don't know if I should say this or not, but because I've got a day one Switch, they're the ones with a physical flaw in them, which they can be hacked. So, and you can install whatever you want. I have, you can see it's behind me, I've got like a billion games. I've never hacked my Switch. But what it means is that day one Switches still sell for an incredible price. Like it's pretty much Like they sell for 450 bucks. So it's going to cost me very little to upgrade. I'm just bringing it out of the case right now. So I used the Switch Pad Pro, and it actually just feels like perfect the way it's like shaped. It like, because of the screen and it's got it pushing to the bezels and everything and the big chunky Switch Pad Pro, it just feels like a Nintendo version of the Steam Deck or something like that. But having said all of this, like, so just with like, it just, some random impressions of the Switch OLED. I know that you can see this from like a billion other places, but the screen's awesome. I'm so used to OLED screens because my iPhone's an OLED screen. So it didn't completely blow me away, but it's definitely a step up from the original. One thing that I was disappointed about was that, they've reconfigured the way that the actual, the speakers work on the Switch OLED. And I really care about that. Like, I like to have, good speakers on just like a portable, right? Like, I don't want to have to rely on headphones. The speakers are better. They're front facing and, like they fire at you from a front facing, which is much better. But it's not like a significant step up. Like, it actually kind of shocked me. I thought, like you'll see it with iPhones every couple of years, the speaker mode is so much better. It's like, wow, this actually sounds decent, right? With this, it's like, yeah, it's better. I can definitely tell it's better, but it's not like a big step. It's really disappointing, honestly, from my perspective. Very like niche kind of concern that I have. I'm coming from a day one Switch, so my battery was like 2.5 hours, and I was playing like Metroid Dread on this on my couch, and I kind of didn't realize I was playing it for like 3 hours straight or something, and it was like, I don't know, only half the battery was done, or maybe 40% left or something like that. But no, it's like super awesome. It feels much more premium, like the actual materials. And it is bigger, but ever so slightly bigger. And everything that I've tried to put it in that I had the original Switch cases and everything have all fit.
Ah, awesome. I was worried about that too.
I think unless you have something that's like, those things that are like molded, that are like really like joined together or something like that, then I think that's a bit different. But outside of that, it should be fine.
With that, because I was listening to someone else talk about that, and like a lot of that stuff you can still squeeze it in, but what ends up happening is the holes at the top don't line up anymore because it's like stretched and everything. So that's where it ends up just being like, well, you just need to probably repurchase a new one.
Oh, that's a good point.
If they haven't got it already, I'm sure they probably already have it for the.
My cases have the top of it has the sort of the outline of the buttons and the Joy-Cons and stuff like that as bevels to protect them, and they fit into there. So I guess it wouldn't work in a case like that, unfortunately.
But you might find that there's a little bit of tolerance there. Like, it might not be as tight as you think. Like, mine I thought was tight, and then I tried it, and it doesn't feel... Like, it's got some looseness in it still. I was like, oh, okay. Like, thought it would have been, like, actually a lot tighter, but it was fine.
I've got a Pokemon case I got from JB Hi-Fi for $1, so I can always try that. Because that has nothing. It's just a plain case with Pikachu on it.
I like it. The idea of you, like, the thought process of you purchasing that item. It's only $1. Do I need it? Do I love Pokemon? No, I don't need it.
The thought
but it's only $1.
It's
It's going to take up more space. I'm now a minimalist, but it's only $1.
Well, in the unlikely event, my actual Switch case will get destroyed, which is about 1,000,000 times less likely than the Switch itself getting destroyed, but whatever. Yeah, I thought, hey, I'll get it. Yeah. Hey, just a really quick thing about the sound. I find, because I play mine in handheld mode most of the time, and if I play a game, I tend to play it on one of my speaker setups, either the 5.1 on the main TV or whatever Logitech speakers I have with a sub on my PC. So the sound tends to be quite good. But I often make what I think is a mistake, and that is I play handheld without headphones. And the moment I remember to put my headphones in, it's a whole different experience to me. I think I forget how crucial sound is as an element in a lot of games. You take it for granted. I actually sound whatever. It's about the visual image. It isn't. It's so much more than the visual image. The sound makes such a huge difference to the atmosphere and the feel of the game and stuff like that. And I did actually try it very quickly with Metroid Dread specifically, and headphones aren't amazing experience. You hear all these cool sounds without them, and I just have a regular Switch. I don't have the OLED Switch. you just lose so many different details in the sound. It's a whole different experience. So from now on, I've kind of made myself this thing where I have to remember to use the bloody headphones. And in case we haven't mentioned this, and we actually haven't because it happened during our break, the latest iteration of the firmware for the Switch now officially supports Bluetooth headsets. So I've tried a few of them, worked perfectly well out of the box, super happy with it. So it's been an awesome experience using that stuff.
So, Mike, are you going to get one?
I am heavily contemplating it. The $299 deal that EB had was not worth it for effectively an upgraded screen because I do have the Mario themed Switch, so battery life and all of that has been fine for me. But if I can maybe sell that Switch for 400 something, $450, and I can find the OLED on special, I probably would. I think the OLED screen is an awesome change to the system. The only thing that I wonder though, and I obviously wouldn't have experienced this yet, is whether there's any issues with burn-in, screen retention, that kind of stuff, which obviously OLED suffer. And I know phones tend to have that, but phones get switched off and elements change a lot more than I think than a game that can have a HUD that is retained there for potentially 50 hours in a game over the course of that game.
Maybe if you're playing like Tetris 99 for 3 hours.
Maybe something like that. I'm curious. Yeah, I'm assuming they've tested that. I'm assuming they've put systems in place to try to avoid that. But I know obviously on TVs it is an issue. Monitors and any of that stuff, it is an issue even to this day.
But it's not too bad compared to the first generation of OLED. I know they've got technology to prevent it, but to your question, Swinny, the OLED Switch, is it worth an upgrade? I think, probably the simple answer is no, right? I think it's nuanced though for those who care. Like definitely if you're on a first GS Switch and you've played it a lot and it's a bit bashed up and everything like that, it's a massive upgrade because you didn't get the upgraded processor, battery, all these kind of things that came out with the model iteration that they did. That was kind of an unannounced one. They changed the box, so it's really obvious to tell which one's which. I think might be worth it then, but from the price, it's just really hard to justify it. And I know that you forbade anyone to say Switch Pro, but it is like ultimately very disappointing that there isn't even a bit of a bump, like from a CPU perspective, because there's so many games that I'm sort of put off playing because I know how bad they're going to feel. And like they do feel like, Hyrule Warriors, which I really enjoy that game. And I would happily play it if it was just even rock solid 30 frames per second, but it like dips to like the teens. It's just kind of really ridiculous. So that's a huge shame, obviously. I think if you can upgrade and it's going to cost you like, like $100 or something like that, 150-ish, it's a pretty decent deal. It's just that if you've got a later revision of the Switch, they're probably like only going to sell for, $250 now, like maybe $300 if you're lucky, because we're going to start seeing a dip in prices. It's already happened in the UK. It hasn't hit Australia yet, but it's likely by Christmas you'll start to see Switches start to sell for like $329, $300 even potentially brand new. So, I think that would really kill the used market for Switches.
So you're telling me upgrade now, pretty much, if I was going to do it?
Like I said, I don't think it's worth it. Like, I don't think it's worth it. And also, you have to be a handheld player. Like, I always play handheld. Well, that's the thing, I
am. Same.
I only play docked when I play Swinny and Smash. Outside of that, I pretty much never play docked. So if you play docked, definitely don't get it because you're not going to see any difference. Point? Yeah, it's really not worth it.
But I'm 99% handheld as well. So to me, that would be a bit of a jump.
Any other questions, Winnie?
No, I just want to reiterate my disappointment in Nintendo just in general for how they've handled everything to do with the Joy-Cons. I don't know how difficult or not it is a task to resolve that issue, but the fact that they didn't even do anything at all for this revision.
Oh, no, they did. Did you hear the news about that? I think it's like literally the last 24 hours, maybe. They published a statement that they actually changed the internals.
Well, the statement, they talked about like fixing a few things, but I mean, the fact that like they've not provided much technical information whether or not they've done that much, have they?
No, and my opinion on that. So just like to let everyone know, they did issue a statement about Joy-Cons finally and Joy-Con drift. They have
I
a whole
had that
bunch
as
of
a story
yeah.
that we didn't cover. Yeah,
They have a whole bunch of lawsuits in the States. So they've got to be so careful with what they say, right? And probably from a PR legal perspective, it's almost better to say nothing outside of we've made improvements, like to the Joy-Con in general. And then let other people figure out, like, have they actually solved the drift part for the most part. So, but I agree with you, like your fundamental point. Like, I get really annoyed when people say, "Oh, there's no such thing as drift." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" It's like I have like
absolutely had it.
literally 10 Joy-Cons in my house that have got drift that I've had to like either try to fix or clean, and it's really annoying.
Did you just buy broken Joy-Cons from eBay? How do you have that many of them?
No, because I've got so many switches in the house.
Yeah, I know.
I think there's like
I
5 switches in the house.
By the way, Sweetie, there is a very simple fix that people have used, which is just to put a piece of paper, open it up, put a piece of paper
I
behind
know.
it.
I'm the one that shared that. With
I
you
know.
guys.
Yeah, but it's also
But
like
look-
that is not a simple fix because
No,
like
I know.
opening it up and then also the
Yeah.
paper will degrade over time.
Of
The
course,
problem
yeah.
for me is I literally cannot use my Switch in handheld mode anymore because of that, unless I'm playing a game that only uses D-pad. So
It's
it's like
affected everyone I know.
yeah. So anyway, I hope that it's obviously just come out. I hope that we can see in let's say 2 months' time if there's because I think it probably would start to see cases at the point if they haven't done enough to change it. So.
So I'm just showing on the screen the white Joy-Cons. I
pretty.
have not used them beyond the initial setup, and then I'll just put them to the side because I know that they'll get broken, and they look really cool, and I like them, and I just don't want to wreck them. Like it was just really stupid and disappointing.
Yeah, well, it's like buying a car and not driving it because you don't want the engine to
Well, not really. It's
go
more
kaput.
like it's more like if they gave you a fancy key or something. It's like, oh, I don't want to wreck
Yeah,
the key
I
if
know.
I keep using it, so I'll use a shitty version of the key.
But to be fair, using the Hori sticks is
They're so good.
amazing
Yeah.
for the setup.
Yeah.
It's so good.
That's one thing to flag is also just with Metroid Dread. I know we've already moved past that segment, but I think that game might be tricky playing it on the Joy-Cons. I didn't play 1 second playing on the Joy-Con, so that's something for people to think about because there's a lot of, as you advance in the game, you have to hold multiple buttons, do lots of tricky things with it. It's quite almost technical, that game at the end, like especially if you want to collect everything. So yeah, like the Hori Split Pad Pro, which I can never say, is very awesome. Anyway, that's it for the Switch OLED. Kind of overall, probably don't recommend it for people unless it's very niche cases. Don't think you really need it. And that wraps us up for this episode. I think it was a very sharp episode, Swinny. Are you happy with it?
Yeah, definitely. Maybe next week I might talk about this.
Oh,
And
so
maybe
you have
next
to say
week.
what it is.
Maybe
for the audio listeners.
Oh yeah, I'm doing a mic. That was a Xbox Elite Controller 2, and I might also talk about this.
Oh yeah,
that?
shit! I
It's a
can't believe.
PS5 controller.
Were
So
you-
that's for next week. That's for next week.
Cool.
One
cool.
of us. One of
So
us.
Swinny is a massive Xbox fan. He's a general gamer though. Like he has all the systems. He has more PlayStation systems than Mike and I. But he's finally on the PlayStation band, and I'm actually
So I
so
think-
happy myself because I was monitoring the PlayStation 5 scene of like when the sales were coming up more than I think Swinny, and kept on messaging you. So I'm so glad you've got it. I don't have to bother.
No, I
with that.
definitely give huge thanks to Intergot for ended up getting mine through the EB Games
Mm.
pre-orders. Took about 2 months, but I got it.
Cool.
So
Awesome.
I'll talk about it next week.
Fantastic. Cool. Well, that's a good wrap up for
Looking
the show.
forward to it.